All That's Left is made possible by our Patreon supporters. To help us continue this work, please consider contributing at patreon.com/leftvoice, and make sure to visit our website at leftvoice.org. Welcome to All That's Left, a podcast from Left Voice. My name is Oden. Last month, the U.S. Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade, which officially rolled back abortion rights. Since then, at least 9 states, and several more to come, have already outright banned abortion. This isn't an isolated case. It's part of the advance of an increasingly radical far right that's also attacking trans rights and LGBTQ rights, immigrant rights, democratic rights, and labor rights. This reactionary agenda, which of course harms people of color and the working class in particular, is what the anti-democratic Supreme Court is helping to push forward. But while reproductive rights are being rolled back here in the US, abortion bans have been lifted elsewhere. In Mexico, in September of last year, the Supreme Court decriminalized abortion up to 12 weeks. In Chile, the new constitution is set to drop the ban on abortion. And in Argentina, abortion up to 14 weeks of pregnancy was legalized in December of 2020. What's important to keep in mind is that these abortion rights victories, though, were not gifts from center-left governments or from generous politicians and judges who just want the best for the working class. Not at all. These victories were won by militant movements on the streets going back decades. The international socialist feminist organization, Pan y Rosas, or Bread and Roses, played a leading role in all these movements. This group exists in 14 countries around the world, including in Argentina, Mexico, Chile, France, Germany, among others. And comrades in these groups have been involved in key struggles in addition to the fight for abortion rights, like the struggle against the coup in Bolivia, the Yellow Vest movement in France, the uprising against austerity in Chile, and many more. On that note, Left Voice is launching Bread and Roses right here in the US, and we'd love for you to join. Check out the show notes to learn more and also to sign up. We really hope that this kind of organization can unite the struggles in our workplaces to the struggles in the streets and in our schools for abortion rights, but also against all attacks on our rights and our lives. Today, I'm interviewing 3 comrades from Bread and Roses, one from Argentina, one from Mexico, and one from Chile, who will talk about how abortion rights victories were won in their respective countries, the important role played by Bread and Roses and the feminist movements, and also what's next in the struggle. Because despite these victories, as our guests will describe today, the fight is far from over. In Argentina, Mexico, and Chile, and other places, feminists are fighting to truly make abortion free and accessible everywhere. And they're also fighting against things like conscientious objection exemptions, which allow healthcare providers to refuse to perform abortions. And what today's guests all make clear is that this is not just a fight for abortion. It's part of a larger struggle against the oppression and exploitation that we face under capitalism. It's a fight for free universal healthcare, for comprehensive sexual health education, for the separation of church and state, for a living wage, for an end to imperialism. It's a fight to end capitalism, a system in which any right that we win can be taken away at any moment. As my comrade Celeste tells us today, legalizing abortion isn't the end point of the struggle. It's just the beginning. And finally, as a bonus, my guests today share with me their favorite chants from the abortion rights protests in their countries. The first stop on my international tour is Argentina, where I'll speak to Celeste Murillo, or Celeste Murillo for the Argentine listeners, who is a gender and culture columnist at La Izquierda Diario Argentina. She is also a co-host of the radio show El Círculo Rojo, which you can listen to on Spotify, and I will link this in the show notes. Then, to discuss the situation in Mexico, I'll be joined by Yara Villaseñor, a sociologist and an editor of La Izquierda Diario Mexico. And my final stop is Chile, where I'll speak to Ale de Cap, a linguistics student at the University of Chile who edits the gender and sexuality section of La Izquierda Diario Chile. So, without further ado, let me hop on my little airplane and take a nice trip to Buenos Aires, Argentina. Okay, so I have just landed here in the wonderful city of Buenos Aires, Argentina. I tangoed my way off my left voice propeller plane, and I'm sitting down with a little café con leche with my comrade Celeste, to whom I now say, Che, welcome
Mhm.
to the podcast.
Hi, how are you? Thank you for having me.
Yeah, no, I'm so glad you could be here. I want to start by kind of setting the context for the interview a little bit, and I was wondering if you could tell me a little bit about the current status of abortion in Argentina.
Okay, today abortion is fully legal until the 14th week of pregnancy. After that time, there are only three exceptions, that is rape, risk to the health or life of the women or pregnant person. Access to abortion has become easier, not only because it's legal, but also because its practice is warranted by the law in the public health system. It's easier to get an abortion in Buenos Aires because actually it wasn't extremely difficult to have an abortion in a big city like Buenos Aires if you knew how or where or you had the money to pay for it. Illegal abortion here meant also an illegal market. But in most of the districts in Argentina, women and anyone who can get pregnant had a hard time to get a safe abortion, especially poor, young, working women who number the most within the death for unsafe abortion here. But the law hasn't erased the deep class inequality in access to abortion. If you rely on the public health system, you will have much fewer options. You will have to pay for an ultrasound, or you will have to wait for weeks for a doctor's appointment. And that is true for most people in Argentina. It's not a specific problem for reproductive health. Even in big cities like La Plata, which is the capital city of province of Buenos Aires, one of the biggest of Argentina, you will find problems to access to abortion. Last year, health workers alert that only 3 of the 47 primary health centers of the city offer legal abortion. So many people have to go to hospitals or to private clinics to have a safe abortion.
Can I
So
just ask,
imagine, yes,
also out of curiosity, how much does an abortion cost?
the last years it becomes cheaper because we have medical abortion, with misoprostol. I don't know if you're familiar with the drug.
Yeah, same drug here, yeah.
Yeah. So maybe a few years ago, since it's an illegal market, since like 5,000 pesos to 10,000 pesos. But I don't know, here, we have a strong inflation. So I don't know, 10,000 pesos a few years ago was a lot of money. Maybe in Buenos Aires City, you have social organizations, even feminist abortion providers. If you had the money, you could access, a safe abortion. But you had to have the information. You had to have the phone number, the people. You had to know. So it was really difficult for the majority of women. So an additional problem is the consensus objection clause of the abortion law here in Argentina. This means that abortion providers can refuse to provide an abortion. And the clause may cause that in many districts you can only find one place to get an abortion. The law does not prevent a whole clinic from raising the objection clause. They are only forced to offer you an alternative place, but many times getting to an alternative place takes time, takes money, and this is a huge obstacle in small cities or towns where the main clinics and hospitals are managed by religious or conservative organizations. I mean, far from the big cities, churches and conservative parties and organizations still have much more power over the institutions. There are no many places where you can get information to have a safe abortion. And this is not the only problem. I mean, you can't access either to basic rights like sex education, reproductive health. In some provinces, a few years ago, not decades, province courts try to prevent public health centers to distribute the morning after pill, for example. You can find public schools where children get religious classes or are invited to pray. And even poor women ended up in jail, like Belen, that is not her name, is a pseudonym, in Tucumán, in the north of Argentina, who she was a woman who miscarried and was accused of murder. She was released a few years later after big demonstrations all over the country. And in a way, the movement for Belen's freedom was a paradigmatic case and maybe one of the starting points of this Marea Verde, the green type movement.
Yeah, that brings me to my next bigger question about how the right to abortion was won in Argentina, because I mean, like you mentioned, the law has a lot of problems, and that's very similar, I think, to in the US, where even before this recent decision by the US Supreme Court, the laws in the United States had a lot of similar problems in terms of equality of access and things like that. So, with this fight for abortion rights in Argentina, I'd love to hear more about it, and especially I'd love to hear more about Pan y Rosas, Bread and Roses, and the feminist movement. And sorry to make this such a long question, but I'm also wondering about the previous like center left governments, like the Nestor Kirchner government and the Cristina Fernandez de Kirchner government. Why didn't they legalize abortion many years ago?
Okay. This is a hard question to answer. Maybe it has multiple answers. Okay, the first, abortion rights have a long story in Argentina. It hasn't started in 2018. Even before the last military dictatorship in the 70s, Trotsky's organization was the first to put the abortion rights on the ballot with a female candidate called Nora Ciapone in 1973. A year after, in 1974, Perón's government enacted a law that prohibited contraception methods. And then the PST, that is Socialist Workers' Party, that is not the same of the US. Small feminist and homosexual organizations made the only public campaign against it. So abortion rights weren't really popular within politics in Argentina. Also, abortion rights have been a feminist issue since the 70s here. In many Latin American countries, actually, small feminist circles discuss reproductive rights, even during the military dictatorships. Most of them had relation with left organization, most of all Trotsky's. The return to democracy in 1983 was the beginning, of the women's movement. That is the name here in Argentina for feminists. Within its main demands were the right to divorce, shared custody of children. In Argentina, in those years, only the father had legal custody, and of course, legal abortion. The first two were achieved in a few years later, but it took 40 years to legalize abortion. One of the main obstacles has always been here the Catholic Church, later also the evangelical churches, and its big influence on politics. As you may know, Catholic Church receives in Argentina public funds. It has a lot of tax exceptions. Even, I mean, state used to pay the bishops, salaries. I mean, if you could call that salaries, until 2020, when the church had to give up to that privilege mostly because it has been losing influence due to sex and corruption scandals. But all major parties in Argentina still have strong links with different churches, with religious institutions, and they still have political power on many public affairs, such education and health. Besides its role in helping the state to manage social programs, you can find social programs like one in the north, also in Chaco province, called Cristianos Ayudar. That is something like Christians Helping, that offers food and help during the pandemic in poor neighborhoods in Chaco. And you had priests, and public employees. Like working together in a way. That's the kind of strong links they have. Feminist and women's movement had and have a crucial role in abortion rights, because no big political party has ever supported feminist demands, not even during the campaign. The only exception is the left parties, or maybe some center-left candidates somewhere, but not the main ones. And you would never hear a president candidate, to say they support some feminist demand, maybe not until the last election. But it's really weird. So until a few years ago, legal abortion was a bad word. Nobody but the left, maybe some center-left group, even said the word abortion during the election. It was just like that. And only a minority of legislators supported legal abortion initiatives in Congress. And speaking of that, the first time we had a project proposed in Congress was in 2007. The Campaña Nacional por el Derecho al Aborto, which is a national campaign for abortion rights, that is a federal coalition of feminist, social, and left organizations, proposed its first project and repeated the presentation year after year. From 2007 to 2018, every government, no matter the political sign, refused to even discuss the bill. And here I go with your question about the Kirchner government, because most of those years, Cristina Fernández de Kirchner was the president. Her government was a mix of traditional Peronism and some progressive credentials on social issues. During those years, government either support or did not refuse to discuss laws regarding same-sex marriage, here called equal marriage, gender identity law, sex education, things like that. But legal abortion was always refused or silenced. The only political actor that allowed legal abortion to remain as a relevant issue was the feminists and the women's movement here. The economic political crisis of 2001 and the scenario that it opened was the starting point of a big movement outside the feminist and the left circles that used to be, really small in Argentina. On 2003, more than 20 years ago, almost 20 years ago, we had the legal abortion on the cover of national newspaper, national media, and this was thanks to the Women's Encounter, that is a national event that gathers women and LGBT people from all over the country since 1986. That same year, 2003, we created Pan y Rosas. At that time, I was trying to remember. I think we were like something like 50 feminists and members of PTS. That is the party I am a member of. Pan y Rosas is a socialist feminist organization inspired by the Bread and Roses strike that you may know, Lawrence, in 1912. We chose that idea because we found the idea of women workers fighting for economics and democratic rights altogether very interesting to fight the prejudice that separates the fight against class exploitation from gender oppression. For us in Pan y Rosas, the fight against patriarchy is the fight against capitalism. I mean, for us, it's like the same thing in a way. And we call ourselves socialists because we believe that to even imagine a future without oppression, we need to build a society without class exploitation. In the meantime, we demand and fight for our rights, like legal abortion. We support and take part in worker protests, especially those where women and LGBT people are taking part of, but always to build a wide alliance with the working class. The main characteristics of the Marea Verde, the Green Tide, was maybe the massivity of the movement. For the first time, legal abortion was being discussed at workplaces, in secondary schools, in universities, even unions and social movements had debates on abortion rights. One of the most interesting things about Marea Verde was that young people, especially girls, here called las pibas, but also young men, they believe that illegal abortion was a health and an economic issue. I mean, with this, my body, my choice idea and the fight against machismo was present, but the majority knew that working and poor women were the most affected by illegal abortion. They were the ones who were risking their lives or were even dying. Um, about the moment when, this debate and the Marea Verde started, the moment, the political context was significant. In 2018, right-wing government was going through a crisis, and President Mauricio Macri said he would allow the debate on legal abortion. And this word allowed was very important for two things. One, the government coalition Cambiemos didn't support legal abortion as a whole. I mean, inside some parties were against, some other favored it, and some didn't want to start a fight with the churches. And President Macri himself wasn't an actual champion, for legal abortion. And number two, former President Cristina Fernández de Kirchner, she never supported abortion before, but also, and especially, she never allowed the debate. She even prevented her party to sit down in Congress and debate any bill when she was president. About your question on Kirchner's government, they had a mixed relationship with Catholic Church. On the one hand, they belong to a Peronist tradition, have strong links with religion institutions, also strong arguments with the church. And on the other hand, a portion of their voters had a progressive agenda. The Kirchnerist government started sort of political dialogue with many people and social movements that were far from the Peronist tradition. That is basically a conservative political party. They supported and expected a lot, especially from Nestor Kirchner first government, but also Cristina Kirchner first administration. When the Congress voted in Argentina the same-sex marriage law in 2010 and the gender identity law in 2012, Kirchner's government and the church were in a very bad moment of their relation. The church had sided with the agricultural bosses in a conflict that took place in 2008, a few years before. But in 2013, Jorge Bergoglio, he used to be a church leader in Argentina and a former political enemy, became the Pope Francis, and the story changed. They established a more polite relationship, and also Cristina Kirchner's second administration was much more complicated, and it lost a lot of popular support, especially for its more conservative economic agenda. Actually, Ni Una Menos, a massive movement against femicides and machismo in 2015, exploded actually under her government. She was the first woman president in Argentina. And the movement had a lot of mixed emotions with the Kirchner administration. It showed that feminist and women's agenda was wider than any political party. I mean, everybody marched, those days. People who supported the government, people who were against, on the right or on the left. So in 2018, Macri, President Mauricio Macri, tried to use a legitimate demand for his own benefit, and his government coalition. What happened next was really unexpected for everybody. One day, the National Campaign for Abortion Rights called a protest, here called a pañuelazo, demonstration where you go with your green bandana, and you just stay there. But thousands of young people showed up. Nobody expected that. The next Women's International Day, March 8th, was massive, and legal abortion was the fundamental demand. We had massive demonstrations, small protests in schools, workplaces. The green bandanas flooded every place in Argentina. Besides the National Campaign for Abortion Rights, many assemblies began to discuss how to achieve, here we call it que sea ley. That means that something like the legal abortion should become a law. Pan y Rosas took part in assemblies all over the country. Our aim was always to build a grassroots movement. For us, the only force that could guarantee a victory, the only force that you can trust in, was that a grassroots movement. One of our slogans was, they vote the law in the Congress, but we win the fight in the streets. And I think we weren't wrong. The thing that made possible that the bill was discussed was that outside the House, here we call it the Congress, there were thousands of people every time that they had a discussion on the bill. They would stay the night, they would stay the day after, they would organize protests in universities, in schools. They would demand union leaders to support legal abortion as a right of their union members. And speaking of that, Pan y Rosas feel actually this initiative of demanding main unions to support publicly, to take a public stance on legal abortion. We even organized a demonstration outside the headquarters of CGT, that is like your AFL-CIO, and demand smaller unions like CTA and unemployed movements to take an active stance in supporting legal abortions, because they said, yes, we are supporting your fight, but we wanted more. We even demand that they call like a strike, for legal abortion, because we believe that it has a lot to do with the union members' rights. Inside the unions, our comrades of Pan y Rosas fought for this. And within the feminist and women's movement, we fought for supporting workers' struggle, because we thought they were, part of the same. Also, we underline all the time the fact that we need an independent movement. And when I say independent, I'm thinking independent from the capitalist parties that only want to benefit from social movements while stating a lot of limits to its demands. Uh, then, you know how the story goes. In 2018, the Congress, your House of Representatives, voted the bill, but the Senate rejected. But people never left the streets, even during the pandemics in 2020, when they discussed against the law. There was massive demonstrations, and we won.
Yeah, thank you for that history. I think that's just so important to hear about because it really shows that there was never a point in this fight where like nice politicians or progressive politicians were like being nice and they were just like, oh yeah, sure, let's debate abortion, let's talk about
Mhm.
these bills. But I mean, this was such a long, really militant fight to force these victories and to bring these fights, discussions, assemblies into the streets, the workplaces, the schools, universities, unions, and also you were saying about the union fight there that it was a push to also get the unions to, for example, like strike and things like that. And I love this slogan that you said of they vote the law in the Congress, but we win the fight in the streets.
Mhm.
I think this is so important and so inspiring, really.
Mhm. Yes, and also I think it's important because we actually saw like when politicians change their vote.
Yeah.
Before we were talking about Cristina Fernandez de Kirchner, even Alberto Fernandez, the new president, and their stance on legal abortion actually changed. Cristina was against and she ended voting yes. Alberto Fernandez, I think he was always, he would always vote yes, but he never support legal, he never championed that right. They changed their politics because they wanted to benefit from the legal abortion movement. Every political party in Argentina wanted to do that. During Mauricio Macri's government, the feminist and the women's movement was the most active one. This is not an exaggeration at all. These years we had Ni Una Menos, we had the Paro Internacional de Mujeres, that is International Women's Strike. We had big, medium, small protests uh, everywhere. Uh, and they began to mix with popular demonstrations against Macri's government, especially his economic agenda. Cristina Fernandez de Kirchner and Alberto Fernandez started to build on those demonstrations, or trying to, especially promising that if people voted for Frente de Todos, the new coalition that is governing right now, everything will be better. One of their slogan was the return to the life we want. That was against the neoliberal agenda that meant rights for women, more money in the pocket. One of the major promises Alberto made on campaign was that he would support legal abortion and that his administration would send a bill to Congress. And this was really important because, in 2018, when we lost the Senate vote, Cristina Fernandez de Kirchner said something that irritated, a lot of people in the feminist and women's movement. She said, "You don't have to get mad, you have to talk to people, you have to try to convince them. Don't be mad with the church, don't be mad with the politics." And people were mad. People were angry. So they change a lot. This. The thing they say to people, the slogan. In 2000, in 2020, Cristina finally voted for yes. She said that it was because her daughter talked to her into that. But we know it was. They changed because they thought they could benefit from that. And when they vote the legal abortion bill, almost the same national campaign for abortion rights bill, it has some clauses as by the conservatives and center legislators as the white consensus objections, age limits, for example. But I mean, it's a similar, bill was voted by the House and the Senate. We saw many. I don't know if many, but some of representatives who had voted against legal abortion in 2018 or hadn't voted at all, they voted in favor, And you saw the other way around too, because now Mauricio Macri's coalition, they didn't have any obligation, so they could vote freely, so they voted against. I think that this is a confirmation of the need for a grassroots and independent movement, because if Kirchnerist or Peronist legislator voted in favor in 2020, it was only because they needed or they could benefit from it, not because they believe that every woman and person who can get pregnant should have the right to choose, and that the state should offer the means to do that. And you know that because in many provinces where representatives and senators voted in favor of legal abortion still have a lot of obstacles to access abortion. And province states are not doing anything to eliminate those obstacles, either political or economical.
Yeah, I think that's a great lesson across countries, is that politicians or capitalist politicians are not your friend. If they
Mm-hmm.
embrace an issue, like they support abortion, or here thinking in the United States, also eventually the Democrats supported equal marriage and LGBTQ rights, it's because they need to support it to get votes and things like that and support, and because they can
Mm-hmm.
benefit from it. It is absolutely not because they actually care about the working class, care about women, pregnant people, anything like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you've mentioned a few times today the conscientious objection clause. Sorry, it's hard to pronounce in any language, I
Yeah.
think. The limits in terms of you can only get abortion up to certain weeks, inequality, and things like that. We know that the fight for abortion rights is absolutely not over. I was wondering two things. Firstly, what are the next steps for the abortion rights movement in Argentina? And what is your message for people in the US who want to win back the right to abortion?
Well, the next steps for abortion rights movement here in Argentina is to make real the slogan "Es ley," that would say, it's the law. That's the way we say here. Money shouldn't be an obstacle to access legal abortion, and churches don't have the right to interfere in national law. Province courts have no right to prevent doctors and nurses from giving access to a legal abortion, but that is happening. So we have to do, like, more things about that. Also, the Marea Verde, the Green Tide, wasn't only about legal abortion. Green Tide spoke and speaks about gender oppression, social injustice, and even class matters. It didn't end it with legal abortion. I think it just, started after you won like a big victory. I mean, different debates start. Also pandemic, was a huge problem. Uh, so right now the movement is not very active, but I think these are the most important next steps. And regarding to the US, I would say to people who is defending abortion rights there, to trust only, in the energy you can find in the streets. By our experience, Congress lobby and these ballot promises don't deliver. I heard President Joe Biden saying he's so sorry that the Supreme Court revoked Roe versus Wade, and I watched Democrats saying that they now believe that abortion rights should be a federal law. But they had the chance. Like in Argentina, Kirchner's government also had the chance, and they didn't do it. Abortion rights, I believe, they are too important to wait for an election or a president, a governor that says that they will give us our rights. I mean, we shouldn't expect that any government give us anything. In Pan y Rosas, Argentina, we have a slogan that says something like this: no one will give us anything. Rights should be conquered, not asked for. And this is not something that we invent. Those words belong to an Argentinian suffragist, Julieta Lanteri, who pronounced those words 100 years ago, exactly in 1922. And I think it remains true because no government until now has given, us anything. So I don't know, why should we trust that they will do something like that? I also believe that legal abortion is tied with free healthcare. I know is a major issue there in the States. And also, I believe that legal abortion won't be right if you have to pay for it, if you have to travel to a different state to have it, to get it, if you depend on the Supreme Court, on a state governor or a city mayor. The laws are voted inside the Congress and the Senate, but as I said before, we learn in Argentina, we win the fight in the street. That is the only language that legislators and presidents understand, and the streets are the only place where our voices sound like a scream loud enough, for them to hear it. Personally, it makes me really happy to see the green bandanas in the United States. I love that people there have chosen this color because for me it has a meaning that our rights are not something judge can change their opinion on, because we want those rights and also we will defend them in the streets. If I could choose, I would love to hear that in the United States, the right to abortion should be safe, it should be free, and it should be a law. So I would love to hear also that que sea ley.
Yeah, that's such an important point and so inspiring, really. And I love the slogan again of "No one will give us anything; rights will be conquered, not asked for." And also this idea that the fight is tied to so many other things. It's not just about like, okay, abortion is legal or it's in the Constitution, but also
Mhm.
it has to be free. And also, like, this is a part of a bigger fight against exploitation and against a system that is always going to fight against liberation and fight against our rights. I do have, of course, one final question that I think I messaged you earlier.
Yeah.
To finish our interview, I would like to hear you sing your favorite chant from the abortion movement. You can sing it in Spanish. You don't have to translate it.
Okay. So I'm a very bad singer. So
Me too. Don't worry.
please. Oh, but one of my favorite was I'm just going to say it. I'm not going to sing it because I'm very bad. Um, it was one that it says, si el Papa fuera mujer, el aborto sería ley. Basta de patriarcado y que nos digan lo que hay que hacer. Aborto libre y gratuito para que decida la mujer. That is one of them. But also, I really love this one because I can't stand, the Catholic Church. So another favorite was aborto libre y legal ya y que los curas se vayan a laburar. That is free and legal abortion right now, and that the priests go to work or something like that, because here, Catholic priests don't work. So those are my favorite songs of the Marea Verde.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, with that, I just want to say thank you so much, and hopefully we'll hear from you again in the future.
Okay. Okay, thank you for having me. Thank you for the invitation.
Yara, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much, Oden. I'm so excited.
Yeah, really excited to have you here. And so today we are here to talk about Mexico, which is a country where there have been victories in reproductive rights in recent years, especially since last year. And before we talk more about the struggle for abortion there, I wanted to know a little bit more about the current status of abortion and current status of restrictions in the country.
Sure. Well, here in Mexico, abortion is not legal. Recently, just like you were saying, in September 2021, a ruling approved by the Supreme Court decriminalized abortion so that it's no longer a crime to terminate a pregnancy for any reason up to 12 weeks. However, this has not been enforced in all the states. There are still 21 states that have not modified their local legislation to decriminalize. And where it is already decriminalized, there is no infrastructure. I have an example. The state of Oaxaca in South Mexico, it's been almost 2 years after the criminalization of abortion there, and there is only one hospital that offers this procedure. And here in Mexico City, the capital, we only have 13 public clinics that can provide this service. The rest are private, and abortions cost between $250 and $500 in the best cases, which is a lot here because the minimum wage is no more than $15 a day. So you can imagine. As if that were not enough, there is a strong reactionary campaign driven by the conservative right and the churches against our right to decide and against the rights of LGBT people and same sex couples. And this reactionary campaign has been for years trying to protect life from conception and criminalize the right to abortion. So they have historically had some weight, especially in the northern states, and the influence of this, the conservative right and the churches have become more powerful and have been strengthened by this government.
Yeah, you mentioned the attitudes and the power of the churches and the government, and I was also wondering about the more general attitude toward abortion and reproductive rights among people in Mexico. So, in the U.S., for example, it's interesting that although we're losing reproductive rights in this country, there's actually only a very small part of the population that supports the complete bans on abortion. And so, my question is the situation similar in Mexico, where actually a lot of people in general support abortion rights?
I've read some surveys and some interviews, and some people, some media, newspapers say that it's about 50%, 45% of the population that supports the abortion. However, you can see in all the feminist dates and actions, like September 28th, that it's the international date for free legal abortion in America, in Latin America. And there are millions of women, young women, adult women, worker women especially, that support the abortion. So I really don't trust these surveys because we really think that abortion is a matter that only where only the women or the person that is pregnant has to decide. So I think the most majority of the population is pro-abortion, and that the grand media, the newspapers that only like reproduce the positions of the dominant class and of the bourgeoisie, are lying to Mexican population so that they can like enforce this reactionary campaign.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think to think about the role of the media and the government's motivations here for sure. like you mentioned, something that's different about Mexico compared to Argentina and Chile, which I'll also talk about later in this episode, is that the right to abortion was decided by the Supreme Court and not by the Congress. But as we know, especially something we know as socialists, is that these kinds of victories, it's not something that, politicians and judges, they're very nice people, they give us these rights just to be, nice rulers, but they're part of instead a process of struggle and militant struggle. So I want to ask you next, how were abortion rights won, and what especially was the role of the feminist movement and bread and roses in Mexico?
Okay, well, when it comes to abortion, I have to remind the audience that our president, Andres Manuel López Obrador, stayed on the sidelines every time he could. Although the governing party, the Morena, had a majority in both chambers of Congress, deputies and senators from since almost 2018 when they won the elections, they refused to pass a bill decriminalizing abortion. It was only, like you said, when the Supreme Court declared abortion bans unconstitutional at the state level that AMLO's party began to move forward with these initiatives to decriminalize abortion in the rest of the country. This is a conquest, of course, won by mobilizations under AMLO's and previous administrations and previous governments. But we had to go out into the streets by hundreds of thousands, no, of women and LGBT people because the government does not want to confront the churches or the conservative right. So the women's movement here has developed, of course, in synchrony with the international feminist wave, like you said, in Argentina, in Chile, no, that are countries that have had a particular influence here in Mexico, no, but there's still a reformist consciousness that dominates, and there's a lot of trust in certain institutions due to the influence of institutional feminism in Mexico. Mm, However, there is a impunity rate of 90% in femicide and in LGBTQ hate crimes, and the forced disappearances of migrants have like have made that the people and women's movement question more the government's security strategy. So many women, especially worker women, are leading processes of organization and struggle against this violent situation, of course, for winning abortion, and against precarious working conditions and low salaries, low wages. So it's been like a complex situation, the relations with the government and the institutions when it comes to legal abortion rights. And well, you asked me how did we struggle, especially or specifically like Red and Roses here, like Pan y Rosas. And I have to say that there have been strikes and protests organized by a lot of women and working people, but working women are still not being recognized as political subjects with an incredible social firepower given the role in the economy. In fact, this is one of our main struggles as Pan y Rosas here because we believe that the massive character of the women's movement can strengthen the ongoing struggles of workers, and we also seek to convince the working class to take up feminist demands. We demand that the big unions place themselves at the service of the fight against femicides and the violence, um, and of course, in pro of right abortion.
Yeah, that's such an important point that you mentioned about the unions and the labor movements and workers. It's something that we also write about and emphasize a lot, is that the fight for abortion rights isn't just, for something that women or pregnant people have to fight for. It's something that, unions, workplaces, and everyone really has to fight together to win.
Yes, of course, because it's a human right, and we should all have the right to decide what happens with our body, with our sexuality. So it's really important that the unions take this demand.
Absolutely. Yeah, and it's also very interesting to hear you talk about AMLO, the president, because he, as I'm sure you know, he's discussed a lot in the US and by also many leftists, like reformist leftists, as very progressive, very transformative. And especially when he was elected, people said, like, wow, a radical being elected in Mexico, so great. But you would say that his government is not pro-abortion and it's not a feminist government, right?
Right, absolutely. It's just like a media strategy. When we shouldn't forget that AMLO has made numerous hostile statements about the women's movement, claiming that it is controlled by the right and solely aim to destabilize his government. Like, I don't know, terrible, honestly, and especially when it comes to this kind of rights, no, especially around, well, about abortion. His position was to put this fundamental right to a referendum, which generated, of course, lots of discontent. No, but it's true what you say. You can feel a lot of disappointment from the millions of voters of AMLOs, no? In these 3-4 years of government, because his party and even himself presents as feminist, as a party that it's supposed to govern for the poor people, for the working class, but its policies have attacked the living, health, and working conditions of millions of women and working people, and it's leading female figures in the case of Morena, that are in positions of power, actually espouse a liberal corporate feminism that has nothing to do with defending the demands of millions of poor, working, or migrant women that are sick of the violence, that are sick of exploitation. So this is why one of the government's central policies has been to create new district attorneys for crimes against women, in a punitivist and carceral policies that have generated sympathy among broad sectors who are seeking justice, but it's not enough to end this violent situation. And that's why all the illusions, all the support that the Morena's party had a few years ago has slowly been disappearing because of the people disappointment with its policies and with its speeches.
So what you mentioned earlier, the this decision by the Supreme Court, of course, it was a victory, and like you said, it was won in the streets and by mobilizing in hundreds of thousands and things like that. I wanted to hear a little bit also about what the next steps are for the abortion rights movement in Mexico.
Okay. Well, now that it's decriminalized, we are facing the challenge of achieving the fully legalization of abortion, and to make it an available, free, and safe procedure in every clinic and public hospital in the country, so that everyone can choose to use this procedure, or access to this service. And that is why we are promoting a national campaign for the right to legal abortion with different organizations. But also, along with this, we need to fight for the effective separation of church and state, to curb the influence of conservative sectors in public life that here in Mexico, like I was saying, is getting more and more strength every day because of these government policies and alliances with the conservative right and the churches. And besides this, we are also fighting for better living conditions, for better living and working conditions for all women workers and for all the working class and the LGBT people, to end cheap labor, of course, no? And to stop the violence that here in Mexico, when we talk about femicide, no, or migrants' disappearances, you can tell just because of these cases that violence is intimately linked to the subordination of or to imperialist policies. So I think this is what's next for us here in Mexico.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point that it's not just that the goal is to make it decriminalized or make it legal, because even here in the US, before this Supreme Court decision here, there were millions and millions of people living in places where there were no abortion clinics, or they had to drive for like 10 hours to get an abortion, and they can't, take the time off work to get an abortion. And so I think that's such an important point also, is that this is not just the end goal is legalization, but it also needs to be free, safe, available everywhere, not just for rich people, not just for, people who live in Mexico City. And like you said, I mean, this fight is also connected to so many other struggles, the struggle against oppression and exploitation also.
Yes, of course, I couldn't have said it better. Mm, and that's maybe one of the main conclusions, because I think that the fight for our rights goes hand in hand with questioning the current political and economic order. Like you were saying, the situation of oppression and exploitation that the capitalism has imposed over us. The big businessmen, the capitalists, have no interest in improving our living conditions or in granting us more rights, and what they want is more profit, more exploitation. So that's why we think it's fundamental to look for allies among the unions and among the working class, which is mostly female, mostly youthful, mostly racialized, and that means a lot of strength. And we need to organize internationally also, because the bourgeoisie and the right wing are doing that. So the working class and the women that are fighting with LGBT people for this kind of rights, for legal, free, safe abortion worldwide, we could say, we have to organize internationally. So from here, I guess that's one of our main lessons from this struggle.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really great and really powerful message for people in the US that, this is an international fight. And like you were saying, the fight for our rights and reproductive rights and liberation, it also goes hand in hand with questioning capitalism, questioning this overall system. And capitalists and capitalist politicians, whether it's Joe Biden or whether it's AMLO, they don't have any interest in improving our living conditions. They have no interest in providing us with these rights, and certainly no interest in stopping this exploitation and oppression.
Yeah, so from here, from Mexico, we hope that our struggle inspires you as much as it does us. No? This new generation in the US that is organizing for better working conditions and that begins to see with good eyes socialism in the heart of imperialism is like a dream come true for us in the southern side of the border. So we hope that you achieve to get this right again, and we support, of course, all the struggles and all the fight for better working living conditions, for reproductive rights, and against the right wing and the conservative wing that has gained so much power in the US. You are not alone. We are fighting the same fight in this side of the border.
Yeah, thank you so much. I have one final question, which I just thought of. Do you have a favorite chant from any protests in Mexico for abortion rights?
Favorite one. I'm thinking about a lot of them. Mm, I I really like one that is against the church. It goes something like, vamos a quemar, vamos a quemar, vamos a quemar, vamos a quemar, vamos a quemar la catedral, vamos a quemar la catedral por machista y patriarcal. And it's great because it's against, because the cathedral, this, like, the
Yeah.
main church of
Yeah.
Catholics, and
Yeah.
we always sing that when we are approaching the cathedral, so it's really fun.
Yeah.
And I can think
I love it.
also,
It's very catchy.
yeah, I can think also in another one that goes, somos la marea verde que sube, somos la marea verde que lucha, somos la marea verde que canta, aborto legal, seguro y gratuito, aborto legal, seguro y gratuito, and you go on like that, like
Nice. Yeah,
with the
yeah.
masses, with hundreds of
Yeah.
people singing this.
Yeah. Okay, I have to say your abortion struggle is inspiring me, but also your chants are inspiring me. So thank you for sharing these with us.
Okay, now you're welcome.
Thank you. Well, this has been awesome. Thank you so much for being here, and yeah, hope to hear from you again in the future. Good luck. So yeah, I've stepped off my airplane here in beautiful Santiago in Chile, and I'm sitting here with my comrade Ale. Welcome to the podcast.
Hello. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, thank you for being here. I want to start by asking you, what is the current status of abortion in Chile?
It's only decriminalized. It doesn't have a legal status. There are only three causes if abortion is legal in Chile.
Yeah.
There's no other causes. There's no free abortion at all.
Yeah. So if you want to have abortion, did you say abortion isn't free in Chile? How much do you have to pay to get one?
In the black market, you can buy pills, misoprostol. That is the most secure method. You have to pay like $150.
So I guess that brings me to my next question, which is more about the history of the fight for abortion rights. So how has this fight, like what is what's the history of the fight for abortion rights in Chile, and in particular, what's been the role of like the feminist movement, the women's movement, and Bread and Roses?
Well, the abortion was banned from Chile since forever, but in the Popular Unity, Unidad Popular, in the government of Allende, there was a movement from the bases. So in some hospitals, they practice abortions for free to any woman who needs it, or for any gestant body who needs it. So the dictatorship of Pinochet, with the conservatives on his side, decided to make it a constitutional prohibition. So it's not only banned from the law; it's a constitutional law that you cannot do an abortion.
So when did people start to like struggle a lot, like in the streets and things like that, in order to try to get abortion rights, or in order to try to win abortion rights?
The first movement, it started at the years of 80s, but it was limited from the feminist movement, that it was a few people in that ages. And in the 90s, there was an institutionalization of feminism that makes that the people that was struggling in the 80s were formed part of the government, and doing Ministerio de la Mujer and spaces from the vegan woman. So the abortion struggle, it was postponed. And then in the 2000s, the first marches of abortion for abortion rights were started at 2013. You can say this is the first big march of abortion, and then with the Marea Verde in Argentina, that makes a lot of pressure in Chile and makes that in Chile also we have in 2018 a movement that is called Mayo Feminista, Feminist May. So in that movement, there was a discussion about women's rights and abortion rights. So it also took the green bandage.
Yeah, scarf. The green scarf or the green
scarf.
handkerchief. Yeah.
Yeah. The green scarf. So we're starting to fight about it, and the decriminalization of abortion. It was internet as a law. It was approved in 2021. But you cannot do an abortion on a hospital.
Okay.
So it's decriminalized, but no, it's not legal.
Yeah. And so, especially during, like you were saying, these really big protests and things like that, what kind of things were Pan y Rosas, Bread and Roses, what were they doing? Like, what were they, what kinds of movements were they organizing?
Well, we since the beginning of and we have some of our comrades were spokeswomen of these organizations, and in the Feminist May, we have a important presence in the spokeswomen of the movement, like in so many universities and schools, and in Santiago, in Antofagasta. So we made an active role in organize people to because we knew in that time, and we know now that the only way to win abortion rights, like abortion free, legal in hospitals, it's with the struggle in the streets. So we are organizing that. We made like you can see from the sky. We made it a big scarf of big green scarf that says aborto legal, libre, seguro y gratuito. We have videos of that and photos because we display the green scarf. It's like 9 meters big, really big.
Yeah.
So the entire marches were taking the scarf and making chants about abortion, and it's really funny and make a cohesion in the group, so we can say that Bread and Roses were on the front line of the struggle for abortion.
That's a great idea. Here in New York, we always have a lot of helicopters whenever we have demonstrations. So I'm going to write this idea down of making a giant scarf.
Yeah, do it, a giant scarf, because it's also involucrates people. The people grab the scarf and started
Shake
to
it.
make it move.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, you mentioned the importance of struggling in the streets and in the workplaces, and how this is really how we win abortion. I mean, in every country as the working class. And I wanted to ask a little bit about the situation in Chile since the protests in 2019, it was very dynamic, and there's now this new president, Gabriel Boric, and there's going to be a vote on the new constitution in September. So I'm wondering, what is the status of abortion in the constitution? Is it going to be legal or still decriminalized, or what do you anticipate is going to be in this constitution?
Well, the old constitution that was written under the dictatorship, was, like I said before, banned abortion. That's been dropped from the new constitution, but there is still no laws and no funding to provide abortion access. So in Chile, well, I have to say that the constitution process and body election served to empty the streets and divert the October rebellion. Boric run as a leftist, but he's governing in an alliance with the Chilean capitalists and the US imperialism. So the draft of the constitution recognized certain rights, but its purpose is to modernize the political regime and to restore governability, which was shaken by the rebellion. And the new constitution will maintain fundamental pillars of the model of capitalist accumulation. It would keep a presidential system and an oligarchic upper chamber, and it will continue to allow the plundering of natural resources, among other fundamental points.
So the constitution in September is not going to bring communism or a feminist utopia.
Not at all. Not at all. And in Chile, there's still no right to abortion, not legal, nor safe, nor free. And there's also no comprehensive sexual education. We don't have sexual education in the curricular system of education. So the new constitution would recognize the sexual and reproductive rights for all the people. And that is product of years of struggle of the feminist movements, like I was told before, for abortion rights. And we from Bread and Roses, Pan y Rosas, Chile, have no illusions in the new constitution. But the plebiscite is approaching, so we can call on people to confront the right and the conservatives that they are calling for a reject vote. And also we are calling to confront the traditional parties of the center left who are looking for ways to further water down the constitutional text.
Yeah, I wanted to ask also about overall the attitude in Chile toward abortion. So something interesting that I mentioned with Yara, who's in Mexico, is I said that in the US, it's really only a very small group of people who are actually interested in banning abortion completely. But now in the US, actually the majority of people support some abortion rights. Is it a similar situation in Chile now, where do you think the majority of people in Chile would actually support legal, free, safe abortion, or how would you describe it?
I think it's more like a 50-50 position, because in Chile, as well as the all Latin American countries, there is a Catholic heritage that is so strong, and they're introducing new churches like evangelic, and so they're so against abortion. In Chile, they have weight, but in the young people, in the youth, there is like, obviously we have to have a free abortion. But
so there have been, of course, some victories in reproductive rights, and like you said, they were won with mobilizations and in the streets. But of course, the struggle for abortion rights is definitely not over at all. So what are the next steps in Chile for abortion rights and for the movement?
Well, I think that we have to first to get known that the new constitution is not going to guarantee rights at all. So we have to fight in the streets and organize people in the working places and in the places of study, because that is the way to conquer our rights. I think that the movement is going to have a demoralization, because there's so many spectators on the new constitution, and when the people see that there is no funding for the abortion rights and there is no funding for the educational policies that makes the abortion rights possible, there's going to be a crash. And I think that we have to prepare for that moment and that is the role that Pan y Rosas want to play in that movement. So we can tell again and again, and we're like I don't know how to say arruina fiestas, like agua fiestas.
Oh, we say party pooper.
Like we're the party poopers.
Yeah.
So now everyone's it's going like the new constitution is lovely and it's going to give us all the rights, and we say no, it's only to modernize the regime and make the capitalists more powerful than now, because they have to they're making a democratic masquerade.
Do you have a message for people in the US who want to win back the right to abortion?
Yeah, I think that you have to understand, and I want to say it very clear, that the only way to win all of rights with organization and struggling. I am going to be very insistent on this, because the main lesson that we drew from the rebellion of 2019 Chile is that we cannot place our trust in parties that are center left, or in Chile, for the last 30 years have dedicated themselves to running a regime that values profits more than our lives. So we can only trust in our force and mobilizations, and that's what will permit us to win our demands. Under capitalism, there is no victory that is permanent. And that is why the struggle for the liberation of our bodies, for me, and I think that socialist feminist is directly linked to the struggle to end the system of misery and barbarism.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's so important to keep in mind, is that, this isn't just the abortion struggle, but it's, a struggle for so many other rights. And there's no way that we can secure abortion rights or LGBTQ rights or workers' rights or anything under this kind of exploitative system.
Yeah, because there's among a crisis, it happened in Poland, it happened now in the US. In Chile, we won this right, but we could lose it anytime. So it's to understand that capitalism won't give us nothing for free, and we have to fight for it, and we have to understand that the only way to have permanent conquers in our lives is to attack directly this system, and say it with all the words. This system is barbaric. This system wants to kill us. This system doesn't want us to keep us alive, and if it wants to keep us alive, it's just because they want more profit. So I think that the struggle for the liberation of women and sexual dissidents, and the liberation of the worker class is to end with the system.
My final question is, what is your favorite chant from the abortion protests in Chile?
Well, I'm going to sing it and then I'm going to translate it.
Yes.
A la Iglesia Católica Apostólica Romana, que se quiere meter en nuestra cama, le decimos que se nos da la gana de ser zurda, travesti o lesbiana, aborto legal en el hospital. Aborto legal. ¿Dónde? En el hospital. Ese.
That's so good.
This says to the Catholic Apostolic Church that wants to get inside our beds, we say that if we want to, we are leftists, lesbians, or travestis. And in the church says a free abortion, a legal abortion in the hospital.
I love it. That's a great chant. Again, I'm inspired both by your militant actions and by your chants and slogans. So I'll try to import these a little more to New York, to the States.
Nice. Yeah, you have to do it.
So thank you so much for being here today. And yeah, hope to talk to you again soon.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for the invitation. And I hope that my English wasn't so bad so you can understand what I'm saying. Because for a third world militant, it's like really difficult to make my words to be understood in another language. So it was a challenge for me, but I think you can explain what you cannot understand by me.
Follow us on Facebook, on Instagram, and on Twitter at left_voice. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider leaving us a review on Apple Podcasts, and share the show with your friends, your family, coworkers, classmates, comrades, and anyone else who you want to radicalize. And finally, Left Voice is an independent, revolutionary socialist publication, which means that we completely rely on the support of our members and our sympathizers. So that we can continue to bring you more episodes of All That's Left, please subscribe to our Patreon at patreon.com/leftvoice. We're really excited about this project, and we hope that you'll join us on this journey.